We want to explore the importance of resilience in sales. Can resiliency actually be learned or developed within a sales organization?
And it's a good question because I think a lot of times people think it's innate, but the research shows it can be learned. Now, Stephen, just like anything else, resiliency is kind of like a muscle. So if you don't use it as a manager, if you're not reinforcing it, it's going to atrophy there. There's a few things that managers can do to build these resilient organizations. When we go in and teach emotional intelligence for sales workshops, the first competency we teach, particularly if the area is resiliency, is emotional regulation. How do you connect the dots there? Here's what happens. If you're an individual that constantly gets emotionally triggered all day long, whether you're a sales leader or sales manager, at the end of the day, you're defeated and depleted, right? Vince Lombardi, the great NFL coach, had a great statement. He said, "Fatigue makes cowards of us all." I've always likened this to like a garden hose, that if you're an individual that every time an emotional trigger comes up, it pokes a hole in that hose, well, that water goes leaking out. Replace water with energy. And so as a human being, if your energy is always directed towards being mad or upset, the energy isn't directed towards getting something done, which actually lowers stress and improves resiliency and sales outcomes. So what's interesting is the skill that's behind emotional regulation and improving it is emotional self-awareness, right? So that which you're not aware of, you cannot change. So you have to, first of all, teach them the power of self-awareness, which is built through carving out quiet time every day, and nobody wants to do it. One of the things we teach under the emotional self-awareness is be aware of it, but also then you've got to put a pause in. So you're aware that you're starting to emotionally react, and the biggest thing you do is put a pause in your response. Sometimes that's simply reframing the situation by, it could be this simple of a question: what else is going on here? What else could be true? What's informing this person? When you put the pause in, you actually take all of that emotion, which is happening in that amygdala reptilian brain, and now you're able to access your prefrontal cortex, which is the smart brain. And that allows you to do and say what you're supposed to do.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And then the other one that's interesting, we will also teach people how to identify self-limiting beliefs or how to tap into the power of beliefs. And that actually falls under another EQ umbrella, which is optimism. Now, here's what's interesting. There is solid research to show that optimistic sales teams outperform pessimistic sales team. Well, let's unpack why. First of all, optimistic people absolutely have this belief that when adversity hits, something good is going to come out of it. When you can have that belief, like, what's good about this? Where am I going to get the gift or the lesson? That allows you to keep pushing through the adversity instead of getting buried by it. The second belief that they have is they can control the outcome. This is called internal locus of control. And I know you've seen this, Stephen, with good sales leaders and how you're coaching them to coach their people. Focus on what you can control, because if you're always focusing, especially in sales, on what's not in your control, the economy, interest rates, marketing doesn't provide enough leads. Well, if you focus there, obviously you're going to be stressed because maybe those are things you can't control. But in sales, there's a lot you can control. I can control practice. I can control asking for advice, mentoring, role playing. When we focus on what we can control, that reduces stress. And then when you're not stressed, you can be creative and all those good things that create more sales.
I love the way you explain that. That's very insightful.
So, Stephen, since you obviously have a big coaching practice, any favorite resiliency questions that you ask of your sales leaders or teach your sales leaders so they can build that muscle within their sales team?
As you described, when people come together, part of it is reflection on a situation, and not only the situation, how they reacted to the situation.
Yes.
Emotional awareness, self-awareness. So part of it is just starting to understand how you react, what your triggers are. One of the questions I suggest managers ask one of their reps is experienced failure, rejection, which we all experience, right? And ask them very simply to think about a situation that a failure or place they were rejected. How did they feel? And then what are they going to do next time it happens? You have a going forward plan that if someone's put their business up for sale or budgets have been cut, it may have happened to you once or twice. I know it's happened to me. Is okay, so how are you going to respond next time? Are you going to take it personally? How are you going to react? And I think some of it's just getting the rep to self-reflect. And if the reaction is, oh my God, why didn't I do this sooner? You got to help them put in perspective and analyze the situation. So, how do you feel when this happens? And then what are you going to do so you're not feeling that way next time it happens?
Yes. I think that's a great strategy because if you want the EQ terms, that's self-awareness. Because again, that what you're not aware of, you're bound to repeat.